In my very last video, I actually showed you 27 of my ball python females, and those are the females I used for breeding. For last year, I got quite a few hatchlings from them. For this year and for the upcoming years, some of them are still developing and maturing, not quite to breeding size yet, but those are the snakes that I'm going to use here in my breeding operation. And I also have some males, and I just did a quick count of my male ball pythons. I only have 8 males, and when I first started into ball pythons, I was actually buying a male and a female pair, and I kept buying pairs and pairs. For example, I would buy a male clown and a female clown, and come to find out that one male can actually service multiple females. As a matter of fact, on my best year, I paired up one male with 13 females, and 11 of them laid eggs. It was pretty incredible. I actually got the idea from another guy on a YouTube video, and he was doing some incredible pairing early on when ball pythons were worth some crazy money, and I guess he was kind of getting greedy. And as a matter of fact, last year I didn't really have any good males, so I picked up one really good bamboo and I spread him really thin. I was taking a chance. If you spread a male too thin across too many females, and that it proves not to really breed to those females, you can have a really bad year. You're taking a chance. So I took a big chance and it paid off well. I wouldn't recommend pairing one male to that many females. Most people, they'll pair one male to 3 or 4 females max, and they won't go much further beyond that. And when I first started in the ball python business, I was getting pairs, and I realized that I didn't really need that many males. Males aren't productive really in the true sense of the word. They don't lay eggs, and they just really just take up space. And then later I found that a lot of people, what they really do is, instead of just having a few males, they'll have a lot of males, which is kind of a different type of thinking than I've had before. So for example, you could have just as many males as females, and the idea behind that is you pair up a bunch of males one year, and then all those males take a break. You pair up some other males the next year and some other males the following year, kind of go through a 2 or 3 year rotation through your males. And that way, you're not pairing one male with 3 or 4 females every year, year after year. You can kind of take a break and mix it up. That's another way you can do it. And I've been thinking about actually getting some more males to put into my rotation so I can mix things up and I don't have the same males all the time. And I've also seen some breeders, what they'll do is they'll buy a male, they'll breed it through their collection, and then they'll actually sell that male and buy a different male and keep switching things up and investing more into the male and keep upgrading your males. And you really upgrade your collection if you upgrade your male over the long term. That's another strategy that you can use to really mix things up in your ball python breeding operation. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to start pulling some males. I only have 8 males that I use as my main breeders, and I'm going to showcase those today, and let's check out those snakes. So take a look at this beauty of a snake. This is my Albino Pied male. It's a double recessive, so if you breed this to a normal, all the babies would look normal. They'd have one copy of the albino gene, one copy of the Pied gene. And this is one of the last males that I actually purchased and bought into outside of my collection, and I'm almost to the point where I'm afraid to buy another snake because I don't want mites and diseases coming into my collection. There's always that risk, especially if you have a lot of ball pythons like I do, and you really don't want to risk any diseases coming in. It's kind of a trade-off. And if I was to buy another snake, I'd almost want to have a quarantine zone outside of this entire operation, maybe in a completely separate building, and I'm not quite sure how I would do that. But that's kind of my thought as far as investing in more snakes. I really want to be careful of bringing in any diseases into this facility here. And this guy's been really good. I paired him up last year with my albino female, 100% het pied, and we actually had one visual albino pied female hatchling that he produced. It was really a beautiful snake. and we got a bunch of albino 100% het pieds. And this year I'm actually breeding them with my clown, hoping for the triple hets. So the babies should be het for clown, het for pied, and het for albino, triple hets. And then you breed the babies together and you'll get a whole bunch of stuff. I'm actually hoping for the albino clown pieds eventually someday, which would be pretty awesome. But it's really powerful to have a double recessive male like this, and he's been breeding really well, doing really fantastic, and he is one of my, I think he's one of my most beautiful snakes, just the albino and the pied mixed together. Here's a ball python male that I purchased 3 years ago from, I actually got this from Justin Kobilka back when he was really into the pieds and the fire pieds and doing a lot of stuff with the really crazy pieds and pumpkin pieds. And this one's actually just a fire pied, so it has the fire gene and the pied gene, and the fire really lightens the dark spots, and the fire is really interesting because if you breed a fire with a fire, you can get a super fire, which is an all white snake with a little bit of yellow down the back. And I've seen some super fires that are really incredible, really awesome snakes. And you got to really keep in mind that if you breed, if you actually end up with a super fire with a pied, you really can't tell if the pied's in there because the super fire is an all white snake without the pied. Still a really powerful breeder. I haven't really produced any offspring from him. I paired him up last year. He was big enough last year and didn't produce any offspring, and as a matter of fact, this year I probed him just to make sure he was a male, and sure enough he is a male. And I actually have quite a few females that I'm pairing him up with this year, hoping to get some really cool fire het pied stuff. So here's one of the very first snakes that I bought. I actually bought this before I knew anything about the head wobble and the spider. This one has kind of a little bit of a stargaze effect on his head. This is the spider mixed with the pied gene. And you can see he's getting a little bit pink, getting ready to go into a shed. That's the typical sign for an all-white snake when they turn pink. Nothing to worry about. It's totally fine. They're getting ready to go into the shed, and they have this little pink hue, kind of a pink color to them. It's pretty interesting. And he other than that, he's usually a really stark white snake, and he is a really good eater. He's been eating really well, and you can see he's probably, you know, bigger than most people have. You know, most people, I'd say, they don't feed their males quite this heavy, and they keep them on the smaller side. But you know, seems like he's doing just fine as a big male. He's been eating quite a few really big rats, and as a matter of fact, I've skipped quite a few meals with this guy, and he still eats every time I put him in there. There's a kind of a funny story about this male. Is this snake actually missed the rat once, got my hand, and he wouldn't let go. This is one of the worst snake bites I ever took from this guy. And other than that, he's a really good snake, not aggressive at all, and he's really stunning, especially when he's not in shed and doesn't have this pink hue. He's really intense, bright, intense white. Here's one of the most intense, most stunning snakes that I have in my entire collection. This is a Pastel Desert Ghost male, and I'm pairing him up with my Pastel Spider Desert Ghost female. Definitely want to get a lot of these in my collection. I'm definitely going to hold some of these babies back. The thing with these is I've never really seen them sold locally. I've seen just maybe one Desert Ghost in the last, I'd say, 5 years at the local reptile shows. It's not very common. It's a recessive gene, so that makes it a little more tricky to produce, especially on a larger scale. So if I would say if these guys actually have babies this year, I'll probably hold back. I'm thinking maybe 2 or 3 females to really boost the production of these Pastel Desert Ghosts. They're just really crazy looking, really intense snakes. Here's my scaleless head ball python. It looks pretty much like a normal. It just has a few scales missing from the head. And if you breed 2 of these together, you actually get a completely scaleless ball python. And when I first started in ball pythons like 5 or 6 years ago, these were selling for $45,000 a snake. I couldn't even believe it. And I really never thought that I would actually own one. I picked him up last year. He's fairly inexpensive Well, he was $1,200 last year, fairly inexpensive as far as investing into a really high-end project. And this year they've come down quite a bit. So scaleless head it's really popular. The market's kind of getting, I'd say, a bit saturated with the scaleless head. And now everybody that has the scaleless head, everyone wants to shoot for the totally scaleless. And there's still not a whole lot of totally scaleless ball pythons on the market, and they're still really demanding a really high price. Here's my bamboo ball python male that pretty much started everything with my bamboos. I bought this guy last year right after I bought a collection of females, and I really wanted a high-end snake to breed with a lot of my females to produce something that the local markets have really never seen, and that is a lot of the bamboo and the bamboo combo stuff. This guy paid off really well. I paid a pretty good price for him. Actually, I paid more than you would typically pay, I think, especially because I was picking out a male that was already fully mature and that was a really high contrast male, really intense. It almost looks like a spider with a really high white sides. And I've seen some bamboos that aren't quite as intense, and I wanted something that was really intense to start with to really kick off my whole bamboo projects. And let me tell you, this guy, he was really, really productive. One thing about bamboos is they will breed with anything. You throw it in there and they will lock for days. It seems like he's more aggressive as far as breeding and more aggressive as far as eating. This guy's pretty much never missed a meal up until this last breeding season. Now pretty much everyone's off of food right now that I've been pairing up everybody. So my males and my females are really off of food right now, but he's been a really good breeder, really good investment, and he's just a really stunning snake. He's just one of my most beautiful single morph snakes. Here's one of the very first snakes I bought, just came out of a shed, so she is really bright and intense. These pieds are some of the most beautiful, just a straight pied. It's one of the most beautiful snakes. I bring this out in the crowd and everyone's like, ooh, that's amazing, I can't believe it. And it seems like I get that response on this snake more than any other snake in my whole collection. Just the stark white, surrounded by these really dark patches of color and pattern. It's really intense. And I actually didn't really pair this guy up at all, because right after I bought this guy, I invested into my Fire Pied, and I've been using my Fire Pied as a breeder, and I'm sure this guy would be just as fine. I have a couple breeder female pieds that I'm pairing up this year, and I was actually going to use them for one of my female pieds, but I decided instead to use my Coral Glow 100% het pied to try to get some Coral Glow pieds. And it seems like there's always pairings that you want to pair up and you just can't get to because you don't have enough snakes, and it just takes a few years down the road. But he's been a really good snake. I'd say this is probably mostly a pet as far as my breeding operation. I haven't really used them to breed, and I don't really plan to really use them to breed anything, because I have my Fire Pied and my Spider Pied and some other pied combos. So I'm actually tempted at some point to actually unload this guy, because he's just kind of an extra pied male, but still a really cool snake. Here's my Coral Glow male. I picked him up a couple years ago, 100% het pied, shooting for some Coral Glow pieds this year. I'm actually pairing him up with 3 females this year. So if you missed out last year on getting your Coral Glows, definitely stay tuned this year. I'm almost positive that I'll actually be producing some more Coral Glows. And the funny thing about it is they didn't really sell. People weren't even really looking at them the first few shows. And then the last couple shows, it seemed like people were fighting over them. They were just going crazy over the Coral Glow hatchlings that I produced. And now I actually don't have any more Coral Glow hatchlings for sale at this next show. And speaking of the next show, there's Repticon coming this weekend at the Arapahoe County Fairgrounds, and that is March 9th and 10th. 2019. Hope to see you there. And I'll have a bunch of my hatchlings there. I won't have any Coral Glows this time. But this guy, it's really interesting. This is really similar to the banana. And basically what happened is two people discovered the snakes at exactly the same time in two different locations. One called it coral glow, the other called it banana. And really, they finally realized that it was essentially the same snake, the coral glow and the banana, and they're just from two different lines, from two different people, essentially the same thing. And the other interesting thing about the coral glow is that they're sex linked. So the male and the female is actually linked to the gene. This happens to be a male maker. So if I bred this to another snake, it's like 99% of all the babies would come out as males. As a matter of fact, every single coral glow I produced this year from this particular male was a male. This is a male maker. There's also female makers, and then the females, if you get a female coral glow, they actually produce a 50-50 ratio of males and females. It's pretty incredible. Okay, so those are my male ball pythons that I'm using as breeders in my operation here in my reptile room. And there's one more male that I'm considering purchasing, and that would be a clown combo. Probably next year. I'll wait another year until my female clowns are big enough to where they get some weight on them and I'm ready to invest in a male. And I'm thinking maybe a spot-nosed clown. I've seen the spot-nosed clowns and they're pretty incredible. What I'll do is I'll just go to Morph Market, scroll through the clown combos for the males and pick out something that looks really cool in a combo. So that's pretty much it. Don't forget Repticon this weekend in Denver at the Arapahoe County Fairgrounds. Hope to see you there. I'm really excited to go to the show, and I will see you in the next video.